For those of you joining over on YouTube, getting ready to go live here on TikTok, going to be talking news, politics, like I normally do. Um, and we are live, just waiting for people to jump in. Um, Looking at news, politics, Trump's cabinet picks, things like that. Um, going to be talking about it as soon as we get some people in the chat here, but I don't think it's going to be potentially as bad as it could be. Um, Donald Trump's still got to get his people through the Senate. All right. As we get some people in here, we're going to be talking news, politics. Going to be talking about the potential next 4 years, how bad things could be, what kind of happened, um, what we can expect, what Donald Trump is reasonably going to be able to do, and how far outside things could be. Um, so as we've been worried about Donald Trump's picks, remember they still got to get through the Senate. They got to get through their Senate confirmation process. Um, and some of them just won't. I don't think Matt Gaetz gets through. I don't think RFK Jr. is going to get through. Probably not Hegseth for defense, things like that. And it's not a big 3D, 4D chess type move, thinking that he's going to put up somebody less worse later. They have options, but this isn't him playing some kind of a strategy. He wants who he wants for whatever reason, and that's why he wants the Senate to go on recess and allow him to appoint whoever he wants. I don't think they will be able to go on recess. Um, and get by with doing any sort of recess appointment. Um, as of right now, Congress has not recessed since 2014 under Obama. Um, and what they do is instead they show up every 3 days. One of the senators holds a pro forma session where he goes, assume everybody's here, and if no one objects, we'll be back in 3 days. In and out. And they keep doing that instead of going on recess. And they do that to avoid giving the president the power of a recess appointment. And that's what they're going to do again. They've done it to every president since 2014 and Obama. That includes Donald Trump in his first term. They did not allow him recess appointments. Vanessa says yes. Yeah, there should be no recess appointments. With Donald Trump, I would agree. The Constitution does allow them, but Congress doesn't like ceding the power over to the president to do a recess appointment. Once they realized they were getting around congressional approval, they found a loophole. And recess appointments used to be a bigger thing before we had commercial travel like we do now. When it took days to get anywhere, it made more sense for recess appointments. Now, when you can literally fly anywhere in the country in a matter of hours, they can be gone and back and they can show up to do whatever. You don't need a recess appointment, it's there. But the reality is Donald Trump wants to use recess appointments with his own party being in the Senate and having control of the Senate. And if he can't get his picks through the normal process when his party controls the Senate, that's pretty bad. That says a lot about who he's picking. And I think some of his most egregious picks are not going to get through. Matt Gaetz not going to be the attorney general. I don't think RFK Jr. is not going to run Health and Human Services. Hegseth probably not going to be DOD. Just not going to happen. They're going to want to put in better. The Senate's just not going to confirm at least a couple of them, and that's just the way it is. I mean, the Senate is always looking for their own power, things like that. They're going to be struggling for 2 years to get almost anything accomplished. Maniac McGee says Trump about to have an extremely productive 4 years. No, not gonna happen. He is not gonna have an extremely productive 4 years. He's barely gonna have an unproductive two. Um, House is looking to be a split, or it's going to be a very thin majority in the House, and they've barely been able to pass anything right now with them having a very thin majority in the House as is, and they're going to be facing about a similar situation in the House. Um, and in the Senate, things are going to get filibustered. He's not going to hardly get anything accomplished because he has convinced the Republicans in Congress not to work with Democrats. And the stuff that they want to pass is going to be so off the wall crazy that Senate Republicans aren't going to want to be attached to it. You know, um, they're not going to want to be attached to cutting Social Security and Medicare. That's going to be wildly unpopular, and anybody who votes in favor of it, if it should pass, has a horrible chance of getting reelected, even in safe Republican districts. Handling a little bit of my own moderation. Um, but no, it's he's only got 54 in the Senate. That's the thing. He doesn't have 60. He can't get past the filibuster unless they nuke the filibuster. And Republicans just spending 4 years in the minority, I guarantee you they don't get the filibuster. Why? Because they know in 2 to 4 years they could be in the minority again. And once they're in the minority, they're going to love the filibuster. It's the reason it never goes away. It's the reason it has endured. Is the party in power or the minority party doesn't want to gut it when they're in power because they know eventually they'll be back in the minority. It's just the way it is. And some of the big things they want to do is going to require Congress, and they're not going to get it through both chambers, with especially with the filibuster. Um, Things like getting rid of the Department of Education. Now, they could really mess up the Department of Education, but I don't think they're going to be able to get rid of it entirely. It's still going to be there in some form. Same with, uh, some of the other things they want to do. They're not going to be able to do a bunch of it. And this idea of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy co-chairing Department of Government Efficiency, unless they pass something through Congress allocating money for a new department, it ain't going to happen. And they're just outside advisors. Vanessa says, so you said Trump shouldn't be allowed to dominate somebody during recess, but a liberal should. It's not about liberal versus conservative in this case. Trump's picks are that bad. I just don't see it happening. But remember, I said that they went back. They have done this. They've not gone on recess since 2014, going all the way back to the Obama years. They haven't gone on recess and given that power in 4 years of having the Senate. Democrats haven't done it for Joe Biden. It may happen again in the future, but right now, it's not happening. And with modern travel, it with modern travel, recess doesn't really, isn't as big of a thing. They can get back if they need to. The whole idea of recess appointments, it's just, I get it, especially like if the two sides are differing parties, and you got one party completely blocking the other. I can see where recess appointments could still be useful, but they should be working together more than they are. Unfortunately, we're no longer in a bipartisan era of politics. Things don't get done like they used to. Now it's all about which side proposed it, and I'm blocking everything the other side's doing. Um, but no, I don't think they do any recess appointments. Vanessa says, "Do you think we're going to end up going into war with the Ukraine-Russian thing?" Uh, I don't know. We haven't yet, which is a good thing. But I also don't think that it's if Russia ends up taking over Ukraine, they're not going to stop at Ukraine. They might say that, but they would eventually go toward a NATO country. They go against a NATO country. Article 5 of the NATO Charter can get invoked, and we can go to war. Um, the other thing is, it's going to depend on how, if Putin continues treating Donald Trump like he has been and embarrassing him, Donald Trump's reactionary, cares about his image, cares about his ego. He could get in. He could want to get involved more if the right person can tell him that he looks weak or he looks stupid because of how Putin's treating him. We could end up doing something. I think for right now, though, the money is going to get dried up. They're not going to be doing nearly the amount of aid to Ukraine. That's just not going to be a thing, which is unfortunate because a lot of the Ukraine aid actually ends up being spent here in factories here that make American goods. Either we're buying them new or we are giving them our outdated materials and we are buying fresh for ourselves. Things like that. We are upgrading our own supply as we go. Handling a little bit of moderation here. Uh, no, I don't want an invite sent. Hate doing it myself when keep bumping stuff on the screen. But anyway, um, I don't know how the whole Ukraine war is going to go. It's going to be different now. Um, Joe Biden granted permission for them to use American weapons deeper into Russia. From the little bit I've seen on it, seems like it is working. Um, so we'll see how that goes. Hopefully, it can get resolved. Unfortunately, Donald Trump's version of resolving the Ukraine-Russian war involves Ukraine giving up any land that Russia has already claimed, and Ukraine doesn't want to do that, obviously. So we'll see how that goes. But he also said within 24 hours, if he was elected, he could end it, and hasn't ended it yet. We're going on a week and a half. It's been 10 days now, roughly 9 days, something like that. Scott says, why would he want to do that before shift change? Oh, why would he want to end the war now? Well, because he said he would. But he said if he got elected, he could end it within 24 hours. Well, and he said in that he could do because he would say it ahead of because he said first he said he could end it when he became president. Then he said, well, even after I'm elected, I could do it within 24 hours. Biden authorized Ukraine to use long-range U.S. weapons in Russia. I don't know. I don't know if it could or not. Depends how Russia reacts. There's always a chance, but so far, um, Russia hasn't done anything against us, even though we've been giving them tons and tons of aid. Scott says, why would Biden do that before a shift change? Um, Try to end the war quicker, hoping that he could force Russia's hand to end it now under his term. because Biden wouldn't accept any sort of a deal if he was involved in the negotiations as far as giving up land uh, in Ukraine. Pachuca says he actually embarrassed Trump by posting those pictures of his wife. Yeah, I don't think that embarrasses him nearly as much as um, you think. It'd be more like the picture of Donald Trump getting led around by a dog leash is more embarrassing to Trump, I believe, than the pictures of his wife, because those are directly about him. He cares about things that affect him uh, himself more. Janer says, I think Biden wants to leave Trump with a war. I don't think so. I think Biden wants to end it. He's trying to bring it to a close. Um, oh, come on. This thing's being slow. Why is it being so low? Don says, good job with the boomer the other night. Always look forward to you guys together. Thanks. For those of you that didn't know, I routinely guest over on the Rational Boomer podcast. I was just on again a couple nights ago. Let me see if I can fix why it's buffering. Um, I don't know. This thing seems to go back and forth between liking my connection and not. But let's see if that helps. But as I was saying, I was a guest just the other day over on the Rational Boomer podcast. I'll probably be back on again in the next week or two. I try to show up every couple of weeks, or more often, depending on if Mike reaches out or mentions something about needing a guest because of travel, things like that. I know he likes to do his podcasts in advance if he's traveling. It does help out a little bit. So if I've got nothing else to do, I'm available most nights. I jump in and we have a good conversation, kind of like we're doing now. Um, let's see. I missed anything? Not so far. Yeah, as far as the war, I don't know how that's going to ultimately end. I hope it doesn't spill. I mean, I want it to end in Ukraine's favor where they get all of their land back. Um, and I don't want it to spill over into any of the other NATO countries. It'd be interesting to see how Donald Trump handles it if it were to spill into a NATO country. Um, because then Article 5 would get invoked. We would be bound by treaty to go into the war and help them. And I just don't know what Donald Trump would do in that situation, if he would still go with it or if he would do something else. Possibly going to depend on who he has around him for advisors um, in his cabinet and things. Um, uh, did see he wants to go after Ann Seltzer, the pollster from Iowa, the one who came out with the poll Sunday before the election saying that Kamala Harris was up in Iowa over Donald Trump. He wants to have her investigated for election fraud for some reason or another. Don't know. Just because she came out with a poll he didn't like. Epstein was available for his cabinet. If you're talking about Trump's first one, yeah. Quick question: do you think Matt Gaetz will make it through the Senate? No, I do not. I do not think Matt Gaetz survives Senate confirmation. Like 30 Republican senators have already said no. I don't see any Democrats voting for him. It's going to be pretty open and shut. as I've said with some of the people that have been mentioned out of Congress. Um, Remember, congressional Republicans and Senate Republicans have worked with these people. They know who they are. They know a lot more about them than we think, just from being around them all the time. Um, so I don't think Matt Gaetz gets through. I would be surprised if RFK Jr. gets through for Health and Human Services, and probably right now from the other nominees, maybe Hegseth could also get blocked. Um, for DOD. Now um, they're going to end up doing whatever. Like they're going to try to pass some people. Some people seem to think that this is some strategy on Donald Trump's part to uh, put through less egregious people, and it's not going to work. It's not a strategy. He doesn't. He's not thinking that far ahead. He's not thinking about, well, if I put this person forward and they decline him, I'll put this person or this person. Because if he was, he'd be listening to his transition team, who already has people picked out for certain positions that are much better, much more qualified, and more likely to get through a Senate confirmation hearing. And he's not listening to them at all from the articles I'm seeing. He's picking the people he wants. He's going off the rails, um, and just picking people who look good on TV, people who've said nice things about him, people just in general that he likes, and it's not going to be good for him in the end, in the long run. Um, Remember, his first term, he didn't get through all of his picks either. They blocked the Republicans in the Senate blocked some of them then as well, and they had a slimmer majority than they do now. They still don't have 60. They can't get around filibusters, and they're going to need, um, you know, if they lose anybody, like they can't lose very many senators as is to pass anything. Just like the House, they don't have a very big margin, and um, they're just not going to get stuff passed. But you says, don't you think it's going to take time to do all those evaluations? Yeah, it does. That's why the first couple weeks of an incoming president's term, the Senate focuses solely on, for the most part, pushing through a lot of the nominees, holding the hearings, holding the all that stuff, and holding the votes. Hopefully, he will spend his 4 years golfing. Oh, he's going to spend a lot of time on the golf course, I believe. You know, he's going to do what he did last time and upcharge his hotel rooms and charge ridiculous prices for meals and things like that at Mar-a-Lago where he's been staying. Same thing he's been doing since he was president. He's going to be upcharging every chance he gets. And, you know, for as much as Republican voters like to complain about Joe Biden going to his residence, he wasn't upcharging them for the stay to stay with him and things like that. There's an entirely different scenario there. Donald Trump, that might be the only reason Donald Trump wanted to be president again, was for the grift of being able to gain, you know, get all this money again from the federal government. Because he can go to Mar-a-Lago whenever he wants as president and bring a whole bunch of Secret Service, the press corps, any of his staffers, all sorts of people with him, and charge him whatever he wants for those rooms. I mean, that's one of his favorite songs to dance to. Um, I just don't think they're going to be able to pass a whole bunch of egregious stuff because, as I've said numerous lives, congressional Republicans know they have to get reelected in less than 2 years. we're on the clock as far as midterm elections. Here in Iowa, I haven't looked much into the guy, but already we've had one person enter the race for governor. And, we got that race is less than 2 years out, but that's already starting. And, we're going to be going into trying to figure out who's going to be running in the midterms for varying House seats, things like that. Um, and they can't pass a bunch of this stupid shit in order to get reelected. Um, Saw something right before I got on the live. They were talking about how young people, 18 to 29-year-olds, had voted in favor of, the ones that did vote in favor of Donald Trump. They want protections for health care. They want protections for um, LGBTQ rights, things like that. They're against more of the foreign wars, but they voted for Trump in favor of the economy. And when this economy goes to shit, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because they believe the change was necessary at the top. Handling a little bit of my own moderation, but I want to say Trump supporters are some of the most um, sore winners I've ever seen. They win and they're still angry. They're still rubbing it in our faces, coming in saying stuff like what this commenter just said right before I blocked him. They won, and yet they want to make sure we know they won. There's a guy 2 blocks down from me who had for weeks leading up to the election had taken all of his Trump flags down. Hadn't he was one of the truck bros that would run around with the Trump flag. Hadn't had his flag on the back of his truck for weeks or if not months. Donald Trump wins, it's all right back up. Got to show that support. Got to rub it in our faces. It it's insane. They've made their entire personality about Donald Trump, and what are they going to do? What are they going to do when his policies backfire? What are they going to do when none of this works? When their everyday prices go way up because there's no one to work the fields, there's no one to do some of the jobs that we need them to do to keep our economy going. What are they going to do? You live in a small town in Indiana, you see a Mexican with a Trump flag. Yeah, because they think they're you know better. Yeah, and they're going to be pointing fingers at Democrats, even though they have both chambers of Congress and the presidency and a conservative Supreme Court. When their policies fail, like we said they would, they're going to try to somehow still blame us and say, well, we didn't let them do everything they wanted, or we somehow made it so it didn't work. But looking back at history, one of the last times the economy crashed as bad as it could with these policies was 1929. Donald Trump kept saying, well, if you elect Kamala Harris, we'd have a 1929 style stock market crash. Now, we could under Trump, and if that happens, it is entirely possible that the Republican Party could lose a generation of voters. Looking back at history, after the 1929 crash, when FDR got elected in 32, there was 20 years of Democrats having the presidency and the House and Senate, with the exception of 2 years during the Truman term, and then they immediately flipped it back Democrat once they realized it wasn't working. So You could lose a generation of voters, but there are some protections in place to prevent it from maybe being that bad. Pink Book Nerd says, "Gosh, imagine." Yeah, I mean, if we had 20 years, it uh, that would be amazing. AOC just posted government will close in 10 days unless something changes. Yeah, they're up against a funding deadline again because right before the election, they punted on a funding bill, kicked it down the road to December. They're probably going to punt it again till, I'm guessing, March, till after they get their new Congress in. We'll agree now, and um, they'll kick it down the road, and they'll kick it till they have complete control. Pink Book Nerd says, it's always been back and forth my whole life. Now it probably won't be better in my lifetime. I think it will. It's going to get rough for 4 years, but I think after it gets as bad as it could because of how bad it is, you're going to see a swing like we probably haven't seen in our lifetime. Maybe something similar to what happened with Obama. And maybe even a bigger swing in Congress than what happened with Obama. Um, and once Democrats have control again, um, you know, things will have to get better. The Republican policies aren't going to help the everyday person. They want to do things like get rid of Medicare, get rid of Social Security, or at least gut it, cut food stamps, cut the Department of Education so no one can go to college. If those things start to happen, voters are going to have no choice but to switch over and vote for Democrats. People are reactionary. When things bite them in the face, that's when they typically react. Thanks for the glimmer of hope. They've never helped the people. Not really. Not since before Reagan. Do you think as Trump fails in his presidency, do you think the Democratic base and support will all return? The weird thing, James, is if you look down ballot, it looks like that base and support hasn't shifted a whole lot. It was just top of the ticket, in at least some of the states. Do I think they'll return? Probably. Independent voters are going to shift back left. It'll probably all depend on how the Democrats end up handling their messages. I think now that we've gotten farther away from the election, I think I said this last night when I was live. It could have been a mistake going around for as long as they did with Liz Cheney. They shifted farther and farther right the closer they got to the election. And I think we lost a lot of left-leaning voters. I think they may have to end up doing a hard shift left, kind of similar to what Roosevelt did with his New Deal. Some kind of major platform like that, and then all of the left-leaning Democratic base will come back. Lynn, somebody else from Iowa, nice to see you. Jesus, my thing's a little slow. I blocked those people a while ago. I'm finally getting the notification on my stream that I blocked them. Um, but you remember with Roosevelt, for those of you that remember the history, Roosevelt had a strong coalition of blue collar working Americans. And I think Democrats need to go after that base again. Go after the union jobs, the union people, and solidify just the blue collar everyday person. And one of the problems is they were right when they were messaging that the economy was strong. The economy was great, except using the metrics like the stock market metric. Who all has money in the stock market that's not tied to a retirement account? When people are talking about kitchen table issues of being able to afford their rent and being able to afford groceries, they're not thinking about whether or not the stock market's booming. Now, Kamala Harris had a lot of messages about helping people in the middle and helping people with everyday issues. The problem is a lot of that message got lost in part because uh, she was talking too much about the big picture economy, also with as bad as Donald Trump could be. Penn can't remember what state just implemented Bible in their schools. Was it another state besides Oklahoma? I know they were trying, and that lawsuit was getting there was lawsuits on that, and they were getting sued over it. Um, and I heard they want to try that one of the short list for potentially heading up the Department of Education is the state school superintendent from Oklahoma, the one who is trying to put Bibles back in schools. That's been solved by the Supreme Court. That's the reason why they said they can't do the Ten Commandment law in Louisiana. This has been dealt with for decades. Um, Supposedly they ordered a couple of hundred. I know they were trying to order Trump Bibles, and they got sued in part because of the law and in part because of their description of the Bibles only fit the Trump Bible. And you can buy, even if that law was constitutional, there are much cheaper versions than the Donald Trump version. And yeah, made in China, but they won't be subject to his tariffs because he can exclude whoever he wants, and well, he'll exclude his people. Um, but this has been dealt with by the Supreme Court numerous times, and they have ruled that it is unconstitutional for there to be school sponsored prayer. So putting the Bible in schools, putting the Ten Commandments up on the wall. Donald Trump said something about specifically trying to go back and putting prayer back in school. It's been dealt with. The thing is, if it was any other religion besides a Christian religion or a Christian ideology, they would be the front line being up in arms screaming about how unconstitutional it is if it was anything else. But because it is what aligns with them, they're backing it. It's ridiculous. Depends on the family's religion, exactly. Christianity has so many different versions and offshoots. They can't agree with each other as far as what is or isn't Christianity, what is or isn't the proper teaching. How can you teach that in a public school setting? Not every community can agree. Also, as somebody who graduated from a private Catholic school, I will tell you that some of the people I know that I still talk to on a regular basis, when religion is dealt with to you on a daily basis like that, either you end up questioning it or you walk away from it, or you're just not nearly as active. It almost has the reverse effect, at least for some people. And, it's not necessarily going to lead people to be more followers of Christianity, and it doesn't necessarily make you out to be a better person. Um, James says, was it true Trump's Michigan rally that Trump had people dress up in fake union uniforms? I had heard that. I heard they were in fake union uniforms. Well, at the same time, I believe that before Joe Biden dropped out, because he was at a union rally not far from there with actual union people. Um, I believe that was around the time Joe Biden walked a picket line. Yeah, I thought that was. This election cycle has been a whirlwind of news. Oh, did he do it? Was it later? Because I know there was one he tried, like, maybe there was another one where he was like at a non-union shop claiming that he was at a union place or something too. He's faked the union thing a couple of times. The thing is, if it was up to him, he'd bust the unions. Same with Elon and some of the other rich people that are on his side. They want to get rid of unions. And we only have a lot of the conveniences that we have now, the 40-hour work week, the 8-hour work day, things like that, because of unions. People forget that. Um, it took a lot with the unions to get us to where we are now. And somewhere between then and now, the unions have become demonized as this thing that at least some people um, believe that unions are the whole reason everything's horrible. Marcia asks, do I know why Biden let Ukraine attack Russia? I think they're letting them go deeper into Russia with U.S. Weapons, trying to force Russia's hand to end the war now. He better watch out. Elon's getting more popular than him. The minute he thinks Elon's more popular, taking the spotlight off of him, he'll find a way to get rid of Elon. And with Donald Trump already saying he wants to weaponize the DOJ and go after his supposed enemies, things like that. We already know Elon is guilty of overstaying visas and working under a student visa, things like that. That he could have the DOJ go after him, get him denaturalized, and send him home. Well, I say home. Back to what was it, South Africa? Carolyn says, hi. They don't care, they're scary. Are you talking about Russians? Like about the Russia trying to end the war? Oh, Elon and Trump. Yeah, they are, but they're only scary as a team as long as they're on the same page. And the minute uh, Trump has a beef with Elon, he's gone. What do I have against Elon? Elon's an idiot. Elon is nowhere near the genius everyone thinks he is. He likes to buy companies, take credit for their work, and then, he tanks these companies. Look what he did to Twitter. Bought it for what, $44 million? Turned it into a shit show. It's now worth $10 billion. And, they're losing subscribers on the daily. People are switching over to I've heard, Blue Sky. Bought it for 44 billion and now it's worth about 10. And dropping, I guess. Jeepman said heard suspicions that Starlink had something to do with false elections. I've heard that, but I've only heard suspicions. I haven't seen anything that has come out with any sort of proof. Now, if they have proof, I would love to see it. And, if there are court cases that come out or if something ends up happening, or if there's an arrest that's made, something like that, then I'd lean towards something happening. But until then, it sounds more like a wild conspiracy theory. I just don't want to get into the same group as what we thought they were after 2016. Or 2020, where they kept saying it was a stolen election. If Musk gets deported, what happens to his business and military contracts? No idea. No idea what happens to all of that. Guy said FBI is investigating slowly. If they are investigating, I haven't heard any sort of an official press statement saying they are doing an investigation. But if it is, We'll see what they come up with. But they're also up against deadlines because states have deadlines for when they have to certify their results. And if there is something going on, they would have to get it done quickly, and ultimately they have to have it done before January 6th when Congress certifies the election results. After it's certified, doesn't uh, doesn't matter. Deegan says Musk's businesses and contracts could be confiscated. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know how that would entirely work. Um, Probably wouldn't happen under a Trump administration, but it's hard to stay. It is hard to stay away from politics, Marcia. It it involves that, everything surrounds it. What are my thoughts on Merrick Garland? Merrick Garland, I thought was going to be great when he got the job. I had high hopes for Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland failed us. If he would have gotten off his ass and said, screw being political, um, and gone after Donald Trump and the J6ers and the sitting members of Congress that were involved and actually investigated it, and not said, well, I don't want to deal with the backlash. I don't want to look political, and sat on his hands for 2 years, we wouldn't be where we're at now. Everybody involved would be facing criminal trials. More information would be out, and you know we wouldn't be dealing with it. But instead, he said, I don't want to be political, so kind of sat on it, made us believe there were investigations going on behind the scenes, but they were slow walking it so bad it wasn't funny. Look what Jack Smith did in 10 months. In the first 10 months after he took over as special counsel, they went from wherever they were to an indictment and charges being filed in like 10 months. He is one of the reasons we are here. There's a lot of reasons, but he did not help things. He could have done us a lot more favors by bringing a lot of this to light. I was hopeful that the incoming Harris administration was going to replace him and they were going to start going after sitting members of Congress. Now I don't know if anything's ever going to happen with people involved in J6. Matt Gaetz, I doubt, will be AG. Like 30 Republican senators have said not going to happen. They're not going to vote for him. He won't be the AG. In order for him to in order for there to be a recess appointment, both chambers of Congress would have to agree to adjourn for a period of time longer than 3 days. Congress has not adjourned since 2014. I don't think there's going to be a recess appointment. And even if they do a recess appointment, at any point, at some point before the end of that Congress, which would be at some point before January 3rd, 2027, the Senate would still have to hold a confirmation vote. And if they don't give their confirmation, then Matt Gaetz would be out as AG. And again, we have midterms coming up in less than 2 years. If they do recess and allow some of these crazy picks in, all the ads are going to be talking about how bad these picks are and how they didn't do anything to stop them. Quillman says, I don't know what you're talking about, but it's not talking about those miniatures. Yeah, I'm talking news and politics. Yeah, I'm not going to switch my topic, but I do have my Legos in the background. Um, just happens to be one of my corners that's easy to set up in. Uh, but no, like if they don't, if they're doing recess appointments and they're completely horrible appointments, all of the ads going into the midterms for those people that are in the Senate are going to be nothing but attacking them for not holding a confirmation and not, kicking that person completely out of the position. And I've said numerous times, you know, politicians, if anything, uh, is they like power, and they don't like to cede power to other things, and they like getting reelected. So if Matt Gaetz loses his nomination, is there any way for him to climb back into Congress? Now, some people think he could come back in with the new Congress that starts January 3rd. I'm not 100% sure about that. I don't know if he is only out for this term. Or if they're, yeah, I know he resigned, but there would be a special election for his seat. He could potentially run for that. The problem is he resigned because of the ethics committee report. They still have that entire report, and they're blocking it because there's some pretty damning things in that report. That's why the Republicans don't want to release it. They're like, well, he resigned, so we're not going to let it out there. If he tried to run again or weasel his way back into Congress, they would then release that ethics report on him. So he's not going to probably try to get back into Congress. As for what he does beyond being the AG, I have no idea. If the ethics report is true, why didn't the DOJ or FBI charge him? Well, they were going to, but one of the biggest people in the report was his co-conspirator, and they ended up, he ended up not being a credible witness. Trump will find a spot for him, don't you think? Maybe. It would have to be something that didn't need a confirmation, or some low-level position that if it does need a confirmation, he's got no real authority. Something like that. But with as bad as he is, Donald Trump also doesn't like to appear wrong. So if the Senate won't confirm him, he wouldn't appoint him anywhere else either. Because then he would look wrong that way. You know. That's why he plays up and he blusters as bad as he does when he fires somebody. He always blames somebody else for him being misled about how bad the person was, and that's why I fired him. He blusters it up about the firings. The ethics committee can't do anything, that's why he quit. Yeah. Basically, he resigned ahead of the ethics committee report. He did the thing George Santos should have done. I'm guessing he was assuming that the ethics committee report was going to be bad enough that they would have kicked him out of Congress anyway. They quoted the ethics report from Matt Gaetz stating he gave the girl money, but he wouldn't admit guilt. Yeah, he's admitted paying her, I guess. Santos, I haven't heard how the trials are going, but he got kicked completely out of Congress like a year ago. Because of how bad he misrepresented himself, the fundraising issues, just a whole bunch of reasons to kick out Santos. Crazy that Trump can be in office, but his picks have to be checked by the Senate. Yeah. The thing is, prior to Donald Trump, the Republicans would never have nominated anybody as bad as Donald Trump. Neither party would have. And that's the thing. The Constitution is written kind of the way it is. They are assuming that the people wouldn't run that were bad enough, that the people who are bad candidates wouldn't run, and there was no idea of parties when they did the, hey TJ, since you're here TJ, I'm going to do something here. I know you like doing this over on the Boomer. I'm going to make you a moderator. Go ahead and, if you don't mind, block them like you do over on the Rational Boomer. I don't get nearly as many, but trying to do it myself that helps me lose the chat. Kamala was a good pick. Thank you, TJ. Kamala was a good pick. She ran a great campaign. I think the worst thing that they did is they didn't separate far enough from Joe Biden, and she was walking that fine line of not crashing the administration that she's part of while trying to separate, and then they spent too long shifting right with Liz Cheney. She only had 100 days, and she raised $1 billion. There was tons of excitement. A lot of people had hope. And to be honest, far-left Democrats just didn't vote for her. They did the same thing to her that they did to Hillary with Bernie Sanders. Some of them wanted even more than what they were going to get with her, and that's a problem. We have to figure out how to better our message. You got to take steps toward the change you want. It doesn't always work to get get all the change in one fell swoop. You got, I said earlier, in 2028, they might have to do something big, like run on a big platform like they did with Roosevelt and the New Deal. And if they run a New Deal type program, they could potentially win. LeBon77 says, can Trump change the 22nd Amendment to run for a third term? The answer to that is yes, but also no. Yes, they can change the 22nd Amendment. However, they don't have the numbers to change the 22nd Amendment. It would take 67 senators and it's like 320 or something like that members of the House, 2/3 of both chambers, to pass a constitutional amendment, and then 38 states would also have to agree to pass that amendment. And I just don't see it happening. They don't have those kind of numbers. We've only ever modified the Constitution 27 times, and 10 of them were done basically in a block in the very, very beginning. So we've really only ever modified it past the first few years 17 times. It's very hard to modify. No, the House needs 2/3. It says it in the Constitution. I don't remember which section. I think it's section 5 under modifying the Constitution. It also says in there just kind of a weird thing, there is a part in there that says they can basically make any amendment they want except for limiting the number of the equal representation in the Senate. She would have won if she appealed to the left, and she would have won if she was a man. Yeah, if she was a man, that might have changed things. I hate to think that badly of the American public at large. But if she appealed more to the left, I think she would have won. They shifted farther to the right, trying to pull off disenfranchised Trump voters, and it actually worked against them. Lori says there should be term limits on Congress or age limits on everyone. I would agree. However, the problem with both of those issues are it takes the Congress to pass a constitutional amendment, and they're not going to vote against their own interests. It was easy for them to put the limits on. It was easy for them to put 2/3 on the president, or the term limits on the president, because it didn't directly affect them. Neil says, love you on Boomer. Thanks. Probably back on again here. I don't know, I was just on a couple days ago, so probably back in another week or two. They voted for Trump, wanting cheaper prices and the scary aliens out and abortion. I don't think the abortion issue was nearly as big of a thing for the people on the right voting for Trump. But the other two things, yeah, Trump voters wouldn't ditch Trump after years of conditioning. No, they wouldn't. Um, no, they wouldn't. Uh, Marcia says abortion was big with Christians. It was, but it's always been an issue. That didn't change anything. That's why the Republicans have had the Christian base for 20, 30 years now. Oh, 50 years now. Forgetting how long it's been. Pink Book Nerd says Eric's one of my favorite guests. Well, thank you. I'm glad you guys enjoy me being over on the Boomer, on the podcast. When I started doing it, I wasn't sure if anybody would actually enjoy my appearances, and you know, once I started hearing people were actually enjoying them, that's part of why I started showing up even more. That and my schedule got a little more open. Um, I know some people who either didn't vote or uh, voted for Trump, liking the idea of uh, having it be in the hands of the states, thinking that that is somehow better, and they live in a state with the abortion ban. So I don't know how that issue all ends up playing. TJ, yeah, you do show up once in a while. I enjoyed your last guest appearance. Pink Book Nerd says you're really smart. Well, thank you. Analytical fits. Um, I kind of was going back and forth on what to do, what to say, come up with a name as I went to do this, and it kind of just, I kind of went with it. Most things do go to the states. Anyway, they do, but as we've learned, when we leave it up to the states, sometimes it has to be done at the federal level because the states just don't agree. And look at the abortion bans. You have every state seems to have a differing idea of what is the correct way to go about it. And now they disagree. You have some states wanting to issue travel bans, and you can't go to different states if you're going for health care, and they want to go after medical providers that provide legal health care in their own state that's illegal in the other state. And this is something that definitely needs to be dealt with on a federal level, just because of the ease of making it a one unified law nationwide. Yeah, when they leave things up to the states, it kind of gets different. Like I said, you have differing states have different ideas and what's allowed, what's not, and then sometimes the federal government's going to have to step in. That's where the supremacy clause kicks in. Also, the ability for the federal government to regulate interstate commerce, and that ties into a lot of things the federal government does. That's how they enforced the desegregation and things like that. There was a court case that went to the Supreme Court, kind of interesting. It was U.S. versus Heart of Atlanta. It was a motel that only operated inside Atlanta. And they said, well, since they only had the one location and it was in Atlanta, that they weren't doing any interstate commerce, that they could end up, still being segregated, etc. And they said, well, the federal government went back and said, hey, wait a minute, you get guests from all over the nation. That's interstate commerce. Supreme Court agreed. And that's part of how they enforced equal rights and things like that. I appreciate it, TJ. I know doing my own moderating is kind of tough. I don't know if the thing automatically was filtering out some, so I wasn't seeing many, but I haven't seen a whole lot of Trump supporters. Not nearly as many as what uh, Mike gets when he goes live, but I also don't get nearly the number of viewers. Yeah, but isn't it weird that they are some of the sorest winners we've ever seen? Realistically, they come in, they do their thing, and they want to let you know for sure that they won, like we don't already know. Oh, they are definitely snowflakes, TJ. Um, I said earlier, there's a guy down the street from me, a couple blocks down. He had all of his Trump stuff put away. Hadn't had his flag out for months, and now all of a sudden it's back. He's got the flag off the back of his truck again. You know, hadn't seen hardly any red hats anywhere hardly in town prior to the election. Few people, but not nearly what it was 4 years ago. Now a lot of them are back again. Democrats need to stop playing nice. Yeah, they do. That's one of their problems. They still believe under uh, the old guard of when they go low, we go high. They needed to scrap that a long time ago. TJ says, dude down the street had a flag that says Trump 2024, the revenge tour. Yeah, exactly. It's all he wants is revenge. And, uh, he wants to go after anybody he thinks wronged him. He wants to sick the DOJ on him. He wants to go after and, punish the news outlets. And, you're going to see some of their press passes revoked, things like that. Whenever you see maggots with anti-progressive and pro-Trump gear, I cringe. Yeah, me too. Um, Rusty says it's all speculation. What? How he's going to handle the media? He basically said as much. He wants to go after the news outlets that he thinks wronged him. ABC, CBS, CNN. Yeah, getting a couple of these here. Yeah, he wants to go out. He wants to go after the um, any of the media that fact check him. I don't think they're losing ratings because of going after Trump. They're going at people are tired of mainstream media. Mainstream media did us no favors in this election. They covered Kamala with a fine tooth comb, covered Joe Biden with a fine tooth comb, and let Donald Trump get away with a big chunk of what he was doing. And they didn't help. Uh, they didn't help us at all. You know, uh, most folks that support uh, Trump believe he's a hero trying to save the country. Yeah, they do. They think he's some kind of hero and all of his policies are going to work. They believe every word he says. When Donald Trump hates experts in any field, he does. Because then he's not the smartest person in the room. And when the majority of economists say his plans are going to be inflationary and drive up prices, you know, he doesn't want to hear that. And they don't want to believe him because he'll tell them not to believe the economists. It's ridiculous. Um, I want to see what some of these Trump supporters do when it comes back and they end up, getting bit in the ass. TJ the Plumber says after January 20th, only buy what's absolutely necessary. Yeah, I've been hearing that from a lot of people. They're already stockpiling, looking at what they can do to grow their own, uh, looking into relearning canning processes, baked goods, all sorts of things to get by on their own, um, and not spend. And you're going to be surprised as to what these tariffs actually do. Yeah, we're gonna look at them, have to look at them and say, "Told you so." We've been warning them. You know, I don't know how many videos I've seen of people talking about conversations they've had with Trump supporters now, who go, "Man, I can't wait till they get rid of Obamacare," who are actually covered under the Affordable Care Act and don't realize it's the same thing. Now that the Affordable Care Act has been around and it's popular, people don't call it Obamacare, except the ones that are trying to get rid of it. Um, you know, because they want to still call it Obamacare. So when they get rid of it, oh yeah, we got rid of Obamacare. Not, and then people don't get pissed till they realize their insurance is gone because it was through the Affordable Care Act, and that's the same thing. The younger people, if this bites them, especially the ones that are, who were under 18 prior to 20, what was it? Was it 2012 when they passed the Affordable Care Act? Who don't know what it was like before it? Where they were too young to know what the insurance world was like. If it goes away, they're going to be in for a rude awakening. It was a crazy thing that with some of the stuff they could do with your insurance. Oh, guess what? You were born with this condition. You're 2 days old, but your insurance will say pre-existing condition and try not to cover it. That was pre-ACA. It is. That's TJ's. He's trying to be funny because he's laughing at everybody who says the same thing. We've been hearing about it since the election. People are now realizing it's the same thing. Obamacare was demonized by Republicans at the time for having things like death panels and all sorts of stuff that were never really true. And it was all in hopes of smearing Democrats and Obama. And with some people it worked. Now people have been actually under the functioning Affordable Care Act. They like the Affordable Care Act. They still don't like Obamacare. That's one of the things I've said for a long time. Republicans are great at messaging. They can message. Democrats don't have that ability. They can't get those same messages out there. If the Democrats could do even a fraction of that kind of messaging, they would probably never lose an election again. Oh, Trump has no replacements for the Affordable Care Act. He's got a concept of a plan. Won't tell you what. The only thing we heard about any sort of concept of a plan was from J.D. Vance, and he wants to basically to have two pools of people. One pool is all the very, very healthy people, so your health care is really, really cheap because you're never going to be using it, and then put all the sick people in another group and they have to pay through the nose. Yeah, it's all in Trump's head. He thinks he's the smartest person in the room. In every room on every situation. Remember what he said about NATO? He learned everything he needed to learn in minutes about NATO. Everything he ever needed to know. He's got no concept of what NATO is or what it does. It wouldn't surprise me if he thinks that like the funding we send NATO goes into a giant checkbook, because he always talks about how they weren't paying their fair share into NATO, the other countries. Well, that money didn't go anywhere. It was an agreement to spend at least a certain percentage of your GDP on your own defenses so you could help out if we need to, if NATO needs to do anything. That was what the agreement was for. But Donald Trump doesn't know that. He probably thinks it's a checking account he can steal from. They probably got something on him. Yeah, they do. Wouldn't surprise me. We said that last time. The last time he got elected. The funny thing is, some of the diehard Reagan Republicans who still back Trump, Reagan wouldn't back Trump. Reagan would probably get kicked out of the modern Republican Party. He never says anything bad about Putin. Not one. Not one, because he wants to be like Putin. He thinks they're friends. He's just a useful tool to Putin. That's about it. God bless Reagan. He would be like Liz Cheney. Yeah, he would have come out and endorsed Kamala Harris if Reagan was still alive. I firmly believe. He would be appalled at what the modern Republican Party has come to. I think Bush Sr., probably same thing, would be appalled at the modern Republican Party. You were in shock Bush did not call out Trump. I think I was too, a little bit. But I don't know how much good it would have done. Why did he not say anything about Melania abuse photos on Russian media? I think he's not. He doesn't care as much because it's not him. If the same photos were I can't talk. If they had been about Trump himself, he probably would have said something. He probably would have cared. If it would have been Ivanka, he would have cared. I just don't think he cares enough about Melania in general to say anything. I mean, she was pregnant and he was cheating on Melania with Stormy Daniels, so how much does he really care? Some people are saying that he may, or she might be soft launching a divorce against Donald Trump because it sounds like she may not be moving into the White House with him and not going to be doing the typical First Lady duties. So that could be interesting. He would be the first president to get divorced while in office. Has his daughter showed up yet? They haven't been around this election. Not that I've seen. I think they're keeping a low profile. Artie says she would have divorced him already. I don't know about that. She didn't do much First Lady stuff in her first term, but she tried to do some. And I don't think she wants to do any of it this time. Yeah, she did hate it. She hated being First Lady and having to do any of it. They were with him election day. Yeah, but that was one of the first. That was one of the few times they've all been together. Like Ivanka didn't do the trials. She stayed out of the court cases, even the big moments. Talking about Melania? Probably. Yeah, I mean, probably. She probably does. Realistically. That's hilarious, TJ. George Gomez is right. People sold out democracy to lower prices of eggs and milk. We're all going to pay. Yeah, although I think some of our guardrails are going to hold, but we're not going to get uh, any sort of lower prices. They're going to go up. If his policies go into effect, they're going to go up. That's just the way it is. Tariffs get added on. Um, ExxonMobil has already said we're producing what we can produce. We don't need to produce anymore to cut prices. Donald Trump was talking about putting sanctions on Iran for oil produced coming into the I think coming into the U.S. But 90% of Iran's oil goes to China. So that's not going to do much to him. He's not going to fix the oil market. It's just not going to happen. His drill baby drill isn't going to work. They're not going to be able to put more oil into the economy. We relive history all over. Yeah, we do. I've been trying to get some comfort as far as what could happen with this election, and I keep looking back at the Great Depression and the 1929 stock market crash and what came out of it. And I think we could get something maybe not as good, but similar. You could end up with Democrats in control for a length of time where they can actually start getting some things changed, some things secured, and just moving us farther to the left and coming up with some kind of another New Deal policy. It's amazing how many people take those things for granted now that they have them. That would be pissed if they went away. Dems need a new leader who can message well. Yeah, they do. I don't know who ends up running the Democratic Party. Normally, it would be the outgoing president, but that's with everything that happened. I don't see that being Joe Biden. He got pushed to the side by his own party. Maybe Hakeem Jeffries. Could still be Kamala. I don't know what her plans are. I don't know if she has any plans on running for 2028 and attempting to do an actual full campaign, primary, the works. Shapiro would be good. A lot of the governors are probably going to be your big names that are going to come out of the next 3-4 years. Well, 2 to 3 years, I guess. Because the governors are going to be doing things to protect the people of their states as they can from the fallout of this Trump administration. And I've heard some names floated for 2028. Gavin Newsom, Shapiro, J.B. Pritzker from Illinois, maybe, as another one. Any of those governors could end up becoming household names, and that's one of the things they need to do. I think one of the things that Joe Biden should have done more is he should have done more with Kamala Harris early and got her out more and gotten people more exposed to her, from the get-go. She was kind of, being the VP, she's kind of hidden and forgotten about. And I think that hurt her name recognition going into the election. I mean, there's a lot of people who didn't even know that Biden had dropped out on voting day, on election day. Do I think, well, you weren't asking me, but asking if Jeffrey should run in 2028. He could be a strong speaker. He might run in 28. I think it would depend on whether or not he becomes speaker in 2026. And uh, you know, if he's speaker, then he actually has some ability to be a household name. If he's not the speaker of the house and he's still minority leader in the house, that's just like he he couldn't get enough name recognition, I don't think, as minority leader. Puffy Coates asked, imagine how Republicans act if Biden did what Trump did to him on January 6th. Oh yeah, they would be calling for all those people to be executed. They'd be calling them traitors and everything, but they wouldn't see the parallel. They wouldn't see the irony. They wouldn't see any of it. They wouldn't see the comparison at all. You think JD Vance will probably be president before 2028? I could see it. Been talking about it on my lives a couple of times. There is a chance, I think, that if things get bad enough, either they use the 25th Amendment, and if they can't do that, that if it is absolutely bad enough, again, as I say, politicians care about power more than anything. That they could end up impeaching and removing Trump themselves. Artie's not understanding Biden's reaction at meeting with Trump. I don't know. Some people had some conspiracy theories about that, knowing it's going to be over. That they think Biden knows something's up with Trump and that that it was all formality and he's not going to be back in the White House. I don't know. I know he's probably. Do I think Trump will be successful with all the court martials with all the current generals? I'll admit I don't know enough about the UCMJ to know how that process would all work. But, I mean, considering he fails at almost everything he does, I would say no. Yeah, we've talked about that, Puffy Coates, about Ukraine using the long-range missiles into Russia. I think, and I'm going on nothing more than a hunch here, that Biden is trying to get Ukraine to force Russia's hand to end the war on his term. Probably should have done it sooner, but he was trying to find a more peaceful solution. And now that he's out of time, because January 20th he'll no longer be president, we don't know what's going to happen with Ukraine after that. Biden wants to disable Russia because he knows what's coming. Yeah, that could be part of it too. First thing you need is a Democrat news channel like Fox. Yeah, maybe. Who would be willing to impeach Trump on the Republican side? I mean, if it gets bad enough, there are enough moderate Republicans. They don't need very many moderate Republicans in the House. All Democrats would be on board. And then you just need the Senate. But if it's bad enough, and I mean if it is absolutely bad enough that Republicans think they're staring at like 20 years of not being in power if they leave Trump in all four, I could see him potentially trying it just as a way of saving face for getting reelected. Too scared like last time. Except last time Donald Trump had the ability to run again. It's not bad enough. It is to those of us that are rational minded, but Republicans aren't rational minded. But they're transactional. Vance would be worse, maybe, but at the same point, if he just watched his boss be the first president successfully impeached and removed, and Congress hadn't changed, like, and it was by their own party, and Congress hadn't changed hands, do you really think he'd risk it? Trump's a lame duck this time around, yeah. He's got no more elections to win. He can't run again in 2028. He may not even live to 2028. And I said the same thing about Biden when he won in 2020, that he may not live through all 4 years. Trump doesn't think he's going to stay forever. He already said he knows he can't run in 2028 unless they change it. But they don't have the votes to change a constitutional amendment or to pass an amendment to allow him to run again. He just can't. Now, he could try something to maybe run, but even so, he wouldn't be, even if he won the election, it says he can't be elected. So I don't even think he can run. Can he make himself a dictator? No. The Constitution very clearly separates the powers of what he can and can't do. He needs Congress. Like, all funding has to come through Congress. And the only way they could change it is by a constitutional amendment. And again, they don't have the votes to do it. They could use the 25th Amendment to remove him. He could, just medically, he could not make it. Katrina asks, didn't the Supreme Court give him the powers of a king? No. That is a misconception about what the Supreme Court's immunity ruling did. What it says is, while he's president, he has absolute immunity for official acts of being president. So, if he can't get arrested for vetoing a law, he can't get arrested for signing a law, he can't get arrested for giving a pardon, even if it wasn't due, things like that. That's when they say immunity for official things, that's what they're talking about. Do I think he'll try to touch Social Security and Medicare? He might try, but Congress won't pass. He needs Congress to pass it, and they won't pass it because they have to get reelected. He might resign, and they give him a full pardon. That could be possible. And maybe that's why he's making these insane picks, because he knows here in a little bit, once he actually gets in, they might wait a few weeks, and then he resigns, and Vance pardons him, and then Vance will pick his own cabinet. If he gets a full pardon, then all of his federal cases would go away. State cases wouldn't, though. You can't preemptively pardon someone. It's been done. That's how they pardoned Nixon. That's how Jimmy Carter, wasn't it Carter who just blanket pardoned everybody who dodged the draft, who could be facing charges but hadn't been found and charged yet. It can be done. They don't have to actually have fully served a term. Some states, that's the state law for the governor pardoning them. Like, I think Georgia, you have to serve out your entire prison sentence before the governor can pardon you and absolve you, of it, basically. Which is a weird thing. Look at Trump now and Biden 4 years ago at the debate. Trump won't make it 4 years. Yeah, I don't think Trump makes it. I mean, I could be wrong, but I just don't, looking at him, I just don't think he's going to make it through 4 years. Yeah, he could end up resigning or something. thing about his health and him resigning, Donald Trump is all about his image. I don't think he resigns because of his health, because that would make him look weak. But he could resign with some kind of a pardon deal and then give him some kind of a cover story. He would have to do something, you know. They would have to. They would phrase it in a way to make it sound like he's a hero out of it, because that's how he is. If you notice, Trump signs never say Republican Party on them. It's a party of one man. Yeah, the modern Republican Party is a cult of personality surrounded around Donald Trump. Um, he's he's the face of the party at this point. When he dies, Republicans are going to lose a lot of followers. Yeah, I think Donald Trump, between his personality of being the loud bully and being the outsider to politics and stuff, I think he brought a lot of people into the Republican fold that will go away when um, he's no longer part of the Republican Party one way or another. And if his economic plan this time goes as bad as it potentially could, it could end up being a thing where they push a lot of younger voters Democrat, and that'll never flip back Republican. Because I saw something earlier, a lot of younger voters have switched over to Trump because I think he'll be better for the economy. Trump hasn't signed the ethics pledge yet. Your thoughts? Um, Not surprised. He doesn't care about ethics, and it's about handling classified documents. He doesn't care about that either. Um, Look at how he treated classified documents the last time. They were stored in a ballroom and in a bathroom and in his private residence in Mar-a-Lago, all sorts of stuff. He don't he don't care about any of that, not in the least. And unless there's something there that he can't be inaugurated on January 20th, um, then he's never going to sign it. Now, as far as he made a comment saying that they should pass a law putting his term to start back on election day on November 5th, he made some comment about that. And nothing, just as a clarification, nothing can happen with that. They can't change the start of his term. That is in the Constitution. Again, would require an amendment. Those take a long time to process, and there's just no way it happens. And some people are thinking maybe it has something to do with his criminal case um, in New York. Maybe that he's hoping that if he could say his term started out after Election Day, um, that he could end up avoiding prison time there. I don't know I don't think he's going to get prison time in New York. If at most, he's probably going to get a fine and some probation that'll be suspended till after he's out of office. If he does get a prison sentence, it'll be suspended till he's out of office. I just don't think he's going to go to prison right before the inauguration. They should have turned his never lost 2020 argument in against him, that he can't run again. Problem is, courts would probably get involved and say, well, he never took the oath of office for his second term, doesn't count anyway, and he'd still be eligible. It would have been hilarious to back him into a corner like that and say, well, since you said you won last time, you can't, and you actually won that election, you can't run this time. But I just don't see that. That wouldn't have worked out in any sort of practical sense. can't at age. Oh, run for a third term at 83. Nothing. Nothing would, other than the fact that he's term limited out. If he wasn't, nothing would prevent him from running at 83. If this would have been his first term, age itself wouldn't have stopped him. There are only 3 qualifications to be president. You have to be an American-born citizen. You must be over 35. And you must have not served at least, or you can't have already served 2 terms or more than 1 term and more than 3 years of somebody else's term. Those are the only qualifications. Unfortunately, there is no upper age limit for president. There should be. There should be. There's not. I mean, both Biden and Trump are older than Bill Clinton. And Bill Clinton is, was the president who was president when I turned 18. So that was a long time ago. What age do you think it should be? I don't know. I don't know what that upper limit is. Maybe the same limit as whatever Social Security retirement is. That would be a good number. Something like that. That you have to be under that number. Whatever we do full retirement, because that's the same age you're getting them out of the rest of the workforce. Why should politics be any different? That might be a good number, whether it's 70, 72. And then the question is, do you put the age limit on what age you are at the beginning of your term? Or do you have to be under that age at the end of your term? That's the other half of that question. Because then if you say, well, you got to be under 70, well, if they're not 70 before they're inaugurated, they would be almost 74 by the time they get through their first term. Something to think about. But again, would take a constitutional amendment, and you might see one. God bless you and you all, and keep the fight going. Trump will self-destruct. He will. He will end up self-destructing. TJ says officers at his union can't run after 65. Exactly. I haven't heard that he's going to raise the retirement age, but it wouldn't surprise me. Retirement age has been going up every few years. I think when I was 18, I think you could start drawing at like 59 and a half or something like that. I think now it's up to 62 and a half to get partial, and full at like 67. I'm not sure what my actual age is. It's going to be even higher than that. Have a good night, Puffy Coats. If you want to catch the rest of this live or the part of it before you joined, it will be available over on my YouTube page, Analytical Iowan, over there on YouTube. I do record all my TikTok lives and post them up over there. Just for those people who miss part of it or don't catch me live, I know I've caught parts of lives and wish I could go back and catch the rest of it. So I do post them up over there. It'll probably be up sometime tomorrow early morning. Just depends on how long it takes YouTube to get done posting it. Sometimes it's way pickier than others. Haven't figured that all out yet. But no, I think there should be some kind of a maximum age. And then, like I said, figure out whether or not they have, whether or not it's like if you say 70 is the max limit to run for any federal office, is it 70 before you run, or do you have to be, or is the cutoff you have to turn that age, before you end your term? Like if you are 69 when you would be inaugurated, but the cutoff is 70, are you still eligible to run for president? That's another part of that discussion. And I think you may end up seeing a constitutional amendment at some point after Trump's term, um, especially if he ends up having to be replaced because of some kind of health crisis due to onset of dementia, something like that, that you may see them pass an amendment kind of like what they did with the 22nd Amendment in response to FDR being elected to 4 terms and serving 13 years. I think it was 13 before he died. Had been elected to 16 years term, and they passed that in like four years, I think, 3 or 4 years. They from when they started it to when it was ratified by enough states, it was like 4 years, something like that. I think you might see that pass, but I don't know if they'll pass it for everybody or if they'll only pass it for the president, but it's entirely possible. But it should probably be in place for everybody, including either a term limit or an age limit or something for the Supreme Court. This lifetime appointment stuff, it's kind of shitty. I mean, I get why it's the way it is, because then you're not always worried about getting reappointed or reelected. They didn't want the justices having to worry about any of that, and they could just focus on ruling on the law. But when you got people on the bench for 30 plus years, and because they're so paranoid about who replaces them, not doing anything like stepping down, like what happened with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, maybe there should be an upper limit of whether that's like a 18-year term, a 30-year term, whatever that magic number is, or an age. Maybe there should be something. You agree with age limits but not term limits because experience matters. I could see that. That's a hard-pressed thing when you're dealing with, the law. Law is different than a lot of fields where it doesn't, even though new laws come out, like the law doesn't change. It's not like, medicine, where if you go to a doctor who's in his 80s, somebody just out of college would have learned a lot different things in that college experience than somebody in their 80s. I mean, there's a big difference there between the two. So maybe it is more of an age limit, and maybe it's a combination. Maybe it is like a high limit term, like something like a 30 years or 35 years or something, but also an age limit of like a hard limit of 70, 75, something like that, whichever one comes first. So you could put a younger justice on the bench, but they still can't serve for 50, 60 years. I don't know. I'm not saying I got all the answers. Just thinking they need to do something. I'm probably going to be wrapping things up here in a few minutes, but I want to thank everybody for joining the live. We had a really good conversation. Thank TJ for being a great moderator. I was glad to see you jump in. Hardly ever haven't seen very many Trump supporters, not since you jumped in. So either you're catching them ahead of me, or they just weren't out in force tonight. One of the two. Like I said a little bit ago, I am going to be putting this up over on my YouTube page, Analytical Iowan over on YouTube. I got all my TikToks up over there. I do have all my lives over there, and I do have a small playlist of government answers where I post videos talking about things I see people get wrong in comment sections or in other videos they make where they don't understand how things work. Like I've got one talking about presidential line of succession. I've got one talking about how potentially, an area could become a state and what all of that looks like. Just trying to clarify things where I can. So feel free to go check that out. The link is in my bio. Otherwise, it is Analytical Iowan over on YouTube. I'm going to keep doing these lives. I do enjoy them, and I do enjoy the interaction. And last few days have been kind of a slow news day. Was one of the other reasons why I decided to jump on and just talk about anything that came up. Easier than coming up with videos. So again, I appreciate everybody for joining me. Hope you guys have a great night, and I will catch you the next time I go live. All right, just wrapped up over there. It was a great live. Thanks again to TJ for jumping in and moderating for me. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will catch you the next time I go live.